Another video is back, and today we will learn something about Asuka Period. Some of you might be confused, when did Asuka Period start? About 3,000 years ago in the Jomon period, at this time the Asuka region was covered by woodland and moors with deer and wild boars. Humans were already settled in scattered locations. They made use of earthen vessels and stone tools and lived by hunting wild animals and collecting fruit and berries. Asuka Period name derives from the capital at that time, Asuka, located in the northern Nara prefecture. In 645 CE, the capital was moved to Naniwa, and between 694 to 710 CE, it was at Fujiwara-kyo. It ended when Empress Jinmei relocated the capital to Heijokyo in AD 710. For some scholars, the period begins in 593, and for art historians, the end of the Asuka period is dated to 645 CE. The period saw an increase in Japan's contact with other regional powers. The rule of such famous figure as Prince Shitoku, the establishment of the Fujiwara clan, Buddhism, and then followed by the Nara period. The Asuka period is Japan's first historical period, different from the prehistoric periods because of the introduction of writing via Chinese and Korea. In addition, a new religion, Buddhism, was introduced in Japan, significantly changing Japanese culture and society. Unlike Japan's indigenous way of the gods, Buddhism had anthropomorphic representations of deities. Buddhism was introduced to Japan in the year 538 or 552. Prince Shitoku, a semi-legendary regent and a politician of the Asuka period, he was also the one to make up the first book of the Japanese history and is said to have played an especially important role in promoting Chinese ideas, spreading both during his reign by encouraging closer ties with China, introducing principles of Chinese government, creating constitution, and building many temples across Japan, which included such famous sites as Shitinoji and Horyoji. The theories of Confucianism and Taoism, as well as the Chinese writing system, had also been introduced to Japan by then. The Asuka period is known for its significant artistic, social, and political transformations, which had their origin in the late Kofun period. The Yamato court, concentrated in the Asuka region, exercised power over clans in Kyushu and Honshu, bestowing titles, some hereditary, on clan chieftain. The Yamato name became synonymous with all of Japan as Yamato rulers suppressed all the clans and acquired agricultural lands. Most people were farmers, others were fishers, weavers, potters, artisans, armorers, and ritual specialists. The Asuka period was a time of transformation for Japanese society. It is named for the Asuka area at the southern end of the Nara Basin, which is a few miles to the south of the present-day city of Nara, which was also the political and the cultural center of the country at that time. So from there, the imperial court, which claimed lineage from the sun goddess, ruled over a loose confederation of rival clans, the most powerful of which were the Soga, one of the most powerful aristocratic kin groups, Mononobe and Nakatomi, and influential clans in ancient Japan. Each of the clans was tied to the imperial line by providing wives for the emperors. They also provided increasingly specialized hereditary services to the court. For example, the Mononobe were warriors, the Soga tax administrators, and the Nakatomi masters of religious ritual. Now, the history wouldn't be complete without arts and architecture. The arts flourished in the Asuka period and have given rise to an alternative name, the Suiku period. The Suiku period after Empress Suiko. Literature and music following Chinese models were actively promoted by the court and artists and were given tax relief. Sculptors produced large numbers of Buddhist figures in wood and gilded bronze. Poems were composed which would find themselves in the Manyushu, or collection of 10,000 leaves, which was compiled. Now, going to the Article 17 Constitution. According to the Nihon Shoki of 720, this is a document authored by Prince Shitoku. The emphasis of the document is not so much on the basic laws by which the state was to be governed, such as one may expect from a modern constitution, but rather it was a highly Buddhist and a Confucian document that focused on the morals and virtues that were to be expected of government officials and the emperor's subjects to ensure a smooth running of state, where the emperor was to be regarded as the highest authority. It is one of the earliest constitutions in the history. As William Theodore de Barry writes, Prince Shitoku's constitution placed more emphasis on basic spiritual and moral values than on the detailed codification of laws and their enforcement. However, there is a rank system established in the Asuka period in the Japanese history that is called the 12-level cap and rank system, established in 603. In the following year, 604, along with the promulgation in the 17-article constitution, Prince Shitoku established the court ranks, Kan'i Junikai, or the 12 grades of cap rank. The ranks in the 12-level cap and rank system consisted of the greater and the lesser of each of the 6 Confucian values, which are virtue, benevolence, propriety, sincerity, justice, and knowledge. Under this system, the imperial court relied on experienced and skilled officials who were appointed and promoted on the basis of their ability to perform specialized administrative tasks. The ministers and officials of the highest status under the system were given caps of purple silk decorated with gold and silver, indicating their assigned court rank. At lower levels, other officials bearing the cap and ranks were chosen for their ability to perform specialized functions, the use of imported techniques for producing weapons and tools, building palaces and temples, bells, paintings, and other symbolic and decorative work of art. These newly created ranks and positions were a significant immigration policy that made provision for immigrants with expertise and achievement as opposed to a rank by birth in a historically prominent local clan. And with all of this information, let us know its origin. The cap and court rank system was originally hailed from China. It was not identical to those in place in the Paikche and Kogoryu Korean kingdoms, and so is thought to have been a modified creation of Prince Shitoku. It was a personal ranking system that overlapped with the hereditary titles or somewhat. So one could be from a low-ranking family, but shoot up through the ranks by personal effort. One of the most noteworthy examples is the Ono no Imoko, an envoy to Sui dynasty, for example. However, certain noble families and the imperial family were by default considered above the system and thus did not need it. Also, the system itself did not last long after Prince Shitoku himself, but similar systems did arise later on in a more institutionalized form. And along with its arts and history is the Manyushu. The Manyushu, or literally the collection of 10,000 leaves, Japanese is the oldest extant collection of Japanese waka, or poetry in classical Japanese, compiled sometime after AD 759 during the Nara period. It contains many poems from a much earlier period, with a bulk of the collection representing the period between 600 and 759. And the precise significance of the title is not known with certainty. The Manyushu contains 20 volumes and more than 4,500 waka poems and is divided into 3 genres. First is the zoka, songs at banquets and trips. Second is somonka, songs about love between men and women. And banka, songs to mourn the death of people. These songs were written by people with different statuses, such as the emperor, aristocrats, junior officials, sakimori soldiers, street performers, peasants, and Togoku folk songs. And there are more than 2,100 waka poems by unknown authors. Furthermore, the collection contains 265 long poems, 4,207 short poems, and one short connecting poem. There is also one poem in the form of 575777, named for the poems inscribed on the Buddha's footprints at Yakushiji in Nara, and 4 kanji or Chinese poems, and 22 Chinese prose passages. Unlike later collections such as the Kokin Wakashu, there is no preface. The Manyushu is widely regarded as being a unique Japanese work, though its poems and passages did not differ starkly from its contemporaneous scholarly standard of Chinese literature and poetics. Many entries of the Manyoshu have a continental tone, earlier poems having Confucian or Taoist themes, and later poems reflecting on Buddhist teachings. The poems were divided into 4 periods. The early period comprises poems dating back to legendary times, beginning from the reign of Emperor Yuryaku. In the second period, the last part of the 7th century, the focus is on court poet Kakinomoto no Hitomaro. The third period brings together poems from the years 700 to 730, including such well-known poets as Yamabe no Akihito, Otomo no Tabito, and Yamanoi no Okura. In the last period, 730 to 760, the focus is on the above-mentioned poet-compiler Otomo no Yakamochi. In addition, the language of the many entries of the Manyoshu exerts a powerful sentimental appeal to the readers. Now, let me give you this one example of the poem of Manyoshu. Song by Emperor Yuryaku. Your basket with your pretty basket, your trowel with your pretty trowel. Girl picking herbs here on this hillside. Speak of your house, speak of your name. In the sky-filling land of Yamato, it is I who reign wide and far. It is I who rule wide and far. Let it be me who speaks of my house and my name. This is the first poem in the Manyoshu that has been attributed to the 5th century, perhaps because it is a love poem and Yuryaku was known in the legend as a great lover. But the diction of the poem is too new for it to date from the 5th century. It is possibly a later adaptation of an old courtship song containing folk elements. Note that asking the house and the name of a young woman was in fact a proposal of marriage, as it is the emperor who rather emphatically makes that request. While boasting of his might, one could say there is a certain amount of power harassment included. The last but not the least is the Taika Reform. The Taika Reforms, Taika no Kaishin, or Reformation of Taika, were a set of doctrines established by Emperor Kotoku in the year 645. They were written shortly after the death of Prince Shitoku and the defeat of the Soga clan uniting Japan. Crown Prince Nakano Oe, the future Emperor Tenji, Nakatomi no Kamatari, and Emperor Kotoku jointly embarked on the details of the reforms. Emperor Kotoku then announced the era of Taika, or Great Reform. Although the Soga family, Japanese aristocratic family preeminent in the 7th century and instrumental in introducing Buddhism to Japan, were destroyed in 645, the reforms carried out from that year until 710, called the Taika Era Reform, or Great Reformation of the Taika Era, that was a series of political and social innovations that were implemented in Japan through a set of doctrines established by Emperor Kotoku in the year 646. It continued the institution of centralized rule. Buddhist art found expression in the temples of the Asuka period. The first major one is believed to be the Asuka Era, sponsored by the Soga. According to reform edicts, the ruler was no longer a clan leader, but Emperor Tenno, who ruled by the decree of heaven and exercised absolute authority. The reforms brought the warlords and clans, which had recently been conquered and united, and their lands under the control of the emperor by establishing the basics of a feudal system. Lords could hold power within their lands and could still exercise hereditary rights to land and titles, but all land ultimately belonged to the emperor, and all loyalties were to the emperor above all other lords and masters. To set an example for other nobles, the crown prince surrendered his own private estate to the public domain under the emperor's control. So, the Taika Reform began with land reform based on Confucian ideas and philosophies in China. But the true aim of the reforms was to centralize the government and to enhance the power of the imperial court, which was also based on Chinese governmental structure. One of the traditions adopted from China was the naming of eras in an emperor's reign. Emperor Shitoku took the era name Taika, which means great change, for the first half of his reign. So much history in this period, and an undeniable fact of rich history, culture, and art. Hope you enjoyed this time machine in the history of Asuka Period. Until next, see you!